Imagine a president so powerful that whispers of arrest sound like dark satire. Except now, those whispers might come with handcuffs. Yes, former Malawian President Lazarus Chakwera is suddenly trending not for a victory speech, but for potential criminal charges tied to death, cover-ups, and corruption. In this video, we're unmasking how a once pious politician winded up in the crosshairs of his successors. We'll step through 5 explosive facts that could explain why Chakwera is being dragged into the spotlight and possibly into a courtroom. You're about to see how politics, tragedy, and power collide in the long way. Buckle up. What you think you know about Malawi's recent drama is about to get a serious makeover. Let's get into it. On June 10, 2024, Malawi's Vice President Saulos Chilima boarded a military plane expecting a routine flight and never landed. The crash killed Chilima and 9 others, leaving the nation in shock. Politico, Wikipedia. Officially, investigations cited weather conditions, pilot decisions, and human error as culprits. A government-commissioned inquiry released a report saying there was, quote, no evidence of foul play. But the plot thickens. Why? Because Chilima was more than a vice president. He was increasingly vocal, increasingly independent, increasingly seen as a thorn in Chakwera's side. Many observers speculate that his rising influence made him a liability. The crash in that light carries the scent of more than just misfortune. The fact that the commission's findings remain contested only adds weight to speculation. Activists and opposition voices point to unresolved contradictions, flight logs with missing data, discrepancies in witness statements, and a handful of resignations from the commission itself. Wikipedia. If Chilima's death were an accident, it would be a tragic coincidence. But in a political environment already rife with tension, coincidence looks a lot like cover-up. Now that we've set the stage with the death that shook Malawi, here's fact 2, how Chakwera's own handpicked team might be turning on him behind closed doors. Lazarus Chakwera didn't just rule, he built a political machine. But even the tightest machines have weak gears. One of those weak links? Saulos Chilima, who served as Chakwera's vice president but developed his own following. Over time, Chilima leaned into critique, calling out corruption, demanding accountability, circling closer to a power base of his own. That's dangerous in any regime. The question is, how far would Chakwera go to protect his grip? Analysts suggest the gap between president and vice president grew into an existential threat. The man next in line, popular with the people, raising uncomfortable questions, you don't eliminate that quietly, you try to disappear it. If politics is chess, Chilima climbed a queen square too close for comfort. He had enough sway, enough charisma, and enough enemies in Chakwera's ranks to make his mere existence a threat. The linked tension between the two men was not a secret. Political whispers suggested that Chakwera bristled at calls for reform and accountability, especially when those came from within. To critics, Chilima represented a competing moral narrative, the man who might expose the contradictions of Chakwera's governance. So if the crash really wasn't an accident, it would be the ultimate internal purge. Remove the insider, neutralize the threat, control the narrative. But killing off a vice president doesn't finalize your legacy. Folks start asking who covers the trail. Let's move to fact 3, the investigation's reopening and ghosts from the past returning. Fast forward to September 2025. Peter Mutharika, formerly ousted, is back in power after defeating Chakwera in a contentious election. Almost immediately, murmurs emerged in Longway's corridors. Mutharika intends not just to govern, but to settle scores. The most incendiary plan, reopening investigations into Chakwera's administration, which could include Chilima's death, financial irregularities, and possible murder. Sources in Mutharika's party openly talk of bringing Chakwera to account for crimes against innocent Malawians. That's not campaign rhetoric. It's a legal threat with a deadline. Already, anti-corruption bodies are dusting off dusty files, re-examining contracts, and interviewing witnesses long silent. These are the skeletons in Chakwera's closet, and the new regime seems ready to shed light, whether to expose or to dismantle. What worries Chakwera's allies is that the same state machinery he once commanded might now be wielded against him. Police, prosecutors, security agencies. When power changes hands, the instruments of justice often shift shape. Mutharika's narrative goes beyond retribution. Proponents argue this is restoring justice, but skeptics warn it might just be selective justice, wielded as a political weapon. In either case, Chakwera finds himself vulnerable. We've seen the crash, the internal threat, and the reactivated investigations, but the real showstopper is how Chakwera's own choices and misdeeds might have built the trap around him. Enter Fact 4. A president's rule lives or dies by how clean or how dirty his record is. Lazarus Chakwera's tenure was rattled by criticisms, allegations of corruption, misuse of funds, and opaque tenders that critics claim went unchecked. One high-profile issue is the Anti-Corruption Bureau's investigations into senior figures, including military leadership. Chakwera once appointed General Paul Valentino Piri as commander of the Malawi Defense Force, a move that drew scrutiny. Piri later came under investigation for allegedly misusing millions in taxpayer funds. If your military commander is under fire, your own headline is flashing. Then there's the shadow of Cashgate, Malawi's well-known financial scandal involving theft and looting at the heart of government. Though it predates Chakwera's presidency, the memory of Cashgate remains a benchmark of institutional fragility and corruption in Malawi. The public is sensitive to any hint of repeating those past sins. Chakwera also earned criticism for cabinet shakeups, rearranged ministries, and contract awards that opponents claim lacked transparency. Each move left a breadcrumb trail, documents, memos, vendor lists, waiting for investigators. If you connect the dots, a pattern emerges. The more you guard your inner circle, the more exposed your outer walls become. Chakwera's protective maneuvers may have built pressure points, ready to be exploited once his opponents regained control. In short, he didn't fall into a trap, he inadvertently constructed parts of it himself. We've traced the collapse of a regime from every side. Now let's examine the culmination, how and when Chakwera might actually be arrested, and what comes next.
So here we are at the showdown. Could Lazarus Chakwera actually be arrested for murder, corruption, or worse? The short answer? Yes. It's within the realm of possibility. The longer answer, it's messy, high stakes, and lined with legal and political landmines. First, Mutharika's administration has already signaled that Chakwera will face justice. Not vague threats, but allegations tied to specific crimes against Malawians. That implies an arrest warrant, charges, and a trial. The opposing camp warns such moves may be politically weaponized, aimed at silencing dissent rather than uncovering truth. Next, Chakwera still holds considerable support among religious communities, civil society, and segments of the electorate. If authorities try to arrest him without strong public justification, backlash could be fierce. Demonstrations, legal appeals, constitutional debates, the whole judiciary might be dragged in. Timing is key. The new government could wait for the right moment, when public opinion is favorable, international eyes are elsewhere, or investigative reports are ready. A sudden dawn raid or a court summons could shock the country. Even if arrested, Chakwera won't vanish quietly. Legal teams, political allies, media warfare, and grassroots protests will all rise. He might be exonerated, or convicted, or negotiate a plea. In any case, the verdict will be a defining moment for Malawi's governance and a signal for other African leaders. If Chakwera is arrested, the effect won't be confined to him. It might catalyze deeper reforms, purge institutions, or deepen divisions. We've walked through every twist: the crash, the rivalry, the investigations, the corruption, the possible arrest. Now, let's close this with clarity and action. So where do we stand now? Lazarus Chakwera was once a man of faith and hopes, elevated by a populace seeking change. But this unfolding saga suggests he may now be a man whose power turned into his own trap. What's your take? Do you believe that justice is finally catching up, or that this is political theater disguised as accountability? Drop your perspective in the comments below. I want to know what you think and how you see Malawi's future. If you liked this deep dive, the drama, the facts, the context, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell, and join Global Pulse News. Because in Africa and beyond, the biggest stories often hide in plain sight. Next time, we'll follow the courtroom, the fallout, and the ripple effects across the continent. Don't miss it, because this is your window into the political pulse. Stay sharp, stay curious. We're just getting started.